Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. This morning, I woke up to a news story that there were rocket attacks going on Israel from Gaza. And I just kind of I was like, okay, that's interesting. I'll check it later. But then I started getting messages come in. I got one from Jen Stevens, and she's like, look at this, Operation Al-Aqsa flood. And I was like, what? And then I got another text from a user that goes by N. She's the one that we prayed for that had the breast cancer, and she's doing better now. And she sent me a text, and so I was like, what is going on right now? And so I looked at it, and it seems like something really very, very serious is happening right now in Israel. And it's not just one of these small skirmishes or flare-ups. Oh my gosh, what I'm about to show you, maybe you've already seen it. I'm sure some of you have been following this closely, but there are some unusual things going on here with this. I think that it's very different. I don't know. Maybe we're at the end. I don't know. Okay, so there's a surprise attack on Israel, a complete surprise attack. Guess what today is? So I checked all the news stories and stuff. This happened today, earlier, it started in the morning in Israel, local time, on the 7th of October, on Shmini Atzolet, which is also sometimes called Simchat Torah. We'll get into that, but I want to focus on the fact that it's coming at the end of the Feast of Tabernacles. Yesterday was the final day, the 7th day, but there's also this 8th day called Shmini Atzolet, and it's a special day. And by the way, yesterday, the 6th, what on the Gregorian calendar, was the 50-year anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. And the one of the main features of that war is that it came out as a surprise. It was a surprise invasion. It came during the holy day of Yom Kippur, the holiest day on the Jewish calendar. This one's happening on what you could call the 8th day of the Feast of Tabernacles, or on Shmini Atzolet. And some of the articles that we're going to refer to also call it Simchat Torah, because I think the way it goes is that in Israel, it's a one-day thing. So both Shmini Atzolet and Simchat Torah are on the same day, but in the diaspora outside of Israel, it's divided into 2 days. But I was already kind of stunned because, it's happening on the 7th, right? 7, completion. Not only, completion and perfection, but the month that we're in on the Gregorian calendar is the 10th month. And we've also talked about how 10 is also in the mathematical sense considered the number of perfection and completion. And when you put the two together, that's where you get, when you times them together, that's where you get 70, like the 70 nations. And we've talked all about these numbers. Both of them together especially are special numbers when you times them together. So the implication is completion. And I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see what actually happens. But like I said, this is very serious. There's a lot of footage I can't show. I've already reposted some of it on my X account. I would encourage you to go there. If you don't have X, maybe sign up for X and then follow me on X. But there are some pretty astounding videos that are coming out. There's one on here that I've reposted where it shows people literally running on foot to get away from Hamas that's invading their town. They're running in a field on foot, like this huge group of people running for their lives. So, my gosh, this is so insane. Okay, let's just get into it. Okay. Okay, Hamas claims to fire 5,000 rockets at Israel, declares, quote unquote, Operation Al-Aqsa flood. If you don't know what Al-Aqsa is, that's here, I better pull up Google Earth. Everyone's familiar with the Dome of the Rock. And I think most people that don't know Israel too well, they assume that the Dome of the Rock is the holiest place in Jerusalem for Arabs, for Muslims. Okay, I better turn on my. Okay, give me just 1 second. Okay, Jerusalem. Here we go. So hopefully everybody knows that Mecca in Saudi Arabia is the holiest place in Islam, followed by Medina, which is also in Saudi Arabia. But then the third holiest place is Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is actually this mosque right here on the south side of the Dome of the Rock. Okay, so, but either way, we're mostly referring to the Temple Mount, which everybody knows that's where the Jews want to build the third temple. Okay, so they are calling this Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, and this came on my radar through Jen Stevens. Thank you, Jen Stevens, for texting me that. She was pointing out, wow, they're using the word flood. Now, as you're about to see, we're going to go through a bunch of different articles. There's so much to look at. They're calling on basically everybody, all Palestinians, all terror groups, and everybody to join in into. They're calling for the destruction of Israel. But they're like being serious this time. And one indication of that is the fact that that's what they're calling this operation, because the name of the operation itself is essentially a call to action to join in. Okay, let's oh yeah, and before I get into this, so after I'd kind of like read some of these stories and stuff, I like my wife and I, we just wanted to go on a drive, because like that's how we connect with each other, that's how we talk, that's how we a lot of times have spiritual experiences or talk about, sacred things with our family and stuff like that. And the most unusual thing happened as we were like discussing all this. We were on the final stretch coming home, and my wife's like, look at that. And I was like, looking at this guy, what? And then there was this parachute that was falling from the sky. And we stopped where it was. It fell like in this field, like to the left of the car, which was on the south side of the road. Probably about, I don't know, like 50 yards or something like that. And it was just really weird. And like we looked for it. It's like, okay, that's where it's at. I went into this field, and I took video of it, and I took some pictures. And guess what it was? It was a rocket. Okay, so I went over there not knowing what the heck I was looking at. I don't have the audio on, but you can see there's like a rocket. There's like the main parachute right there. And I was just like, what in the heck? I figured that either this was kind of like a hobby rocket, or maybe I doubted this, but there was like beeping that was coming from this right here, this black like canister, or like the middle part of the rocket. I was like, okay, maybe this is like a weather rocket or something like that. But I went out there and I was just like, what in the world? I ended up finding that there was like this like piece that had like a phone number on it and a name. So then I was like, oh, this is like somebody's like private, like hobby rocket. And as I walked back to the car, the guy pulled up and he's like, yeah, we're shooting off rockets today. But I was just like, of all days for this to happen, I've never come across a rocket like that. Just like driving, and then randomly there's a rocket that comes back down with a parachute. So on a personal level, that was kind of special to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, of all days, when you have this surprise attack. And remember, we've talked about, just within the last couple of weeks, we were talking about Yom Kippur, the Yom Kippur War. 50 years ago. It was a complete surprise attack. And I was thinking out loud, I don't think that could happen again, because, we have satellites, we have really good surveillance. So in order to like mobilize people and get everything into place, like you'd see troop movement and stuff. And the only way that you can really cover that up is, claiming that you're doing military exercises. And that's exactly what Russia did. They were preparing to invade Ukraine, and you can't hide that. You can't move everything stealthily. When it's like a large scale thing, it's like people are going to see it. And especially nowadays, everybody has a smartphone. And so you're just like, well, we're just doing, military exercises. So I didn't think that it was even possible. But somehow they pulled this off. And I'm going to read to you how Israeli intelligence and the military, they're surprised that this happened because it must have taken a lot of planning. Somehow or another, they pulled it off and they were surprised. I'm about to read it to you. So, okay. Hamas claims to fire 5,000 rockets at Israel, declares Operation Al-Aqsa flood. Hamas says it has launched 5,000 rockets at Israel in an early morning surprise attack it calls Operation Al-Aqsa flood. Mohammed Deif, the Hamas military commander, issues a statement saying that the ongoing attacks are in retaliation for Israel's quote-unquote desecration of the Al-Aqsa mosque in Jerusalem. By the way, I better do this too. I never know, since I can't, I don't know you personally. I don't know how many people are familiar with Israel, so I'm just going to do this really quick. Turn on borders. Let's turn this off. Okay. So here's Israel. It's a very tiny country to begin with, but then you have primarily the West Bank. This is like the main territory claimed by and for Palestinians. You have the Golan Heights up here that are disputed with Syria. And then you have this tiny little strip of land right here. It's why they call it the Gaza Strip. You have this. And so Hamas, for a while, they've been the ones that have been in charge. They've been like the quote-unquote government, which the United States view them as a terrorist organization, but they've been the government of Gaza. Because before that, it used to be, if I remember right, it used to be the Palestinian Authority that controlled both the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. But I don't know when it was, maybe like 2009 or something like that Hamas came to power. And so they're the ones that are launching this attack. Earlier this year, around April, around the time of Passover, there was a big flare-up, but it wasn't Hamas. It was the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and that seemed pretty intense. It resulted in an operation from Israel, and then things quieted down, and so it was like, okay, I guess things are fine now. But now Hamas has jumped in, and we're going to have to see what happens. But okay, so he adds that Israel killed and wounded hundreds of Palestinians this year, and that Israel rejected offers for prisoner exchange deals. Over 5,000 missiles were fired, DF claims. Quote, "Today the people are bringing back the revolution and reviving the march of return." I should have highlighted this because I've been highlighting all the key things in yellow. You're going to see there's a lot of very interesting language coming from Hamas. I don't think that they're viewing this the way that they would other attacks. Today, the people are bringing back the revolution and reviving in capital letters, march of return. He urges Arabs in Jerusalem and inside Israel, in the Negev, the Galilee, and northern Israel, quote, "set the earth on fire under the feet of the occupiers." So this is a broad call to attack Israel, like the entire country, all over. Okay. He further calls on the Islamic resistance in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. Countries with terror movements that are militarily supported by Iran, to, quote, "merge their resistance with that of the Palestinians today." And start marching, look at this, start marching towards Palestine now. Now, you might think that this is just empty rhetoric, or it's just being belligerent, being showy, hyperbole, I guess you could say. I'm not so sure. You know why? Because I came across this article while I was scrolling through X. This is from Jerusalem Post. This is breaking at the time that I'm recording this. Taliban. You remember the Taliban in Afghanistan? That they're the ones that I was fighting in 2014 when I was deployed over there in Bagram, and somehow we just let Afghanistan go after 20 years of war, and now they're back in power. Yeah, those guys. Taliban has asked Iran for passage to join terror campaign in Israel. You guys, the Taliban wants to join in, and that's like an actual real report. So in order for them to get to Israel, Afghanistan is over here to the east. So their biggest obstacles, so to speak, would be getting through Iran, and then I suppose through Iraq, and then either through Syria or Jordan. I doubt Jordan would let them through. They're a little bit more on the moderate side, I believe, but I don't think that they'd have any issue crossing through Syria. I guess I'm thinking in terms of like moving troops on the ground or forces on the ground. Of course, maybe they would just fly over there or something like that. But this is no joke. The Jerusalem Post. The Taliban is requesting permission to cross through Iran into Israel. Okay, so I don't know. I don't know if they're being serious. I'm assuming that they are. I don't know. The Taliban has reportedly asked Iran for passage to Israel to help Hamas continue its terror against the Jewish state, according to multiple foreign media reports from October 7th. That's today. The Taliban has allegedly asked for passage to, quote-unquote, conquer Jerusalem if Iran, Jordan, and Iraq are willing to support their troops. That is crazy. To conquer Jerusalem. Okay, let's move on. Salah al-Arari, deputy head of Hamas, who is considered to be its leader in the West Bank, issued a statement along the same lines, calling on the Arab and Islamic nations to join Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This is from PBS NewsHour. Netanyahu declares war on Hamas after a surprise attack kills dozens of Israelis. Hamas militants fired thousands of rockets and sent dozens of fighters into Israeli towns near the Gaza Strip in an unprecedented surprise early morning attack during a major Jewish holiday Saturday, killing dozens and stunning the country. Israel said it was now at war with Hamas and launched airstrikes in Gaza, vowing to inflict an quote-unquote unprecedented price. Okay. From Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in a televised address declaring a mass army mobilization. Quote, "We are at war. Not in operation, not around, but at war. The enemy will pay an unprecedented price, return fire of a magnitude that the enemy has not known." Okay, so let's do a quick review of Israeli wars. So on Wikipedia here, they have a list of all the major wars and conflicts. So we've come here a number of times. The three main wars that really threatened Israel's destruction was the War of Independence in 1948, the Six-Day War in 1967, and then most recently, the Yom Kippur War, October of 1973. And remember, so here's the dates for the Yom Kippur War, from the 6th to the 26th of October on our calendar, which today's the 7th, so today is exactly 50 years and 1 day from the Yom Kippur War. And this is the war where they came the closest to destroying Israel. Since that time, there's been, just different smaller things: Palestinian insurgency in South Lebanon, 1982 Lebanon War, South Lebanon conflict, First Intifada, Second Intifada in 2000. That was kind of a famous one. The 2006 Lebanon War. And then it has these wars with Gaza. So in December 2008, Gaza War. 2012, Israeli operation in Gaza Strip. 2014, Gaza War. And then most recently, Syrian Civil War. I'm guessing that's just like smaller operations that Israel's participated in with Syria in Syria, whatever. And then the 2021 Israel-Palestine crisis. So according to this, the last time that there was a Gaza war was in 2014. So here we are almost 10 years later since that time, and then almost exactly 50 years later since the Yom Kippur War. By the way, while I'm thinking about it and remember this, so again, today is the 7th, which is already pretty interesting. It's also Shabbat in Judaism because their Shabbat is on Saturdays. And then next week is going to be when the eclipse goes over Utah. So exactly 1 week ago was the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, and it was the first day of General Conference on the 30th of September. Now today, exactly 1 week after General Conference started, there's this surprise attack on Israel on the 8th day of the Feast of Tabernacles, or if you want to be technical, Shmini Atzelet and Simchat Torah. And then next week is going to be the eclipse over Utah. Very, very interesting. I thought that it was interesting that the eclipse is on the 14th because that's 2 7s, but I didn't really make much out of it. Well, now there seems to be potentially more significance to that with what's happening today on the 7th. Okay, so the shadowy leader of Hamas military wing, Mohammed Daif, I'm going to just pronounce it that way, Daif, in turn said that the assault was in response to the continued blockade of Gaza, Israeli raids inside West Bank cities over the past year. Yeah, that's been a big news story, especially when they raided Jenin. Violence at Al-Aqsa Mosque, which we saw that earlier this year. Israeli police went inside the mosque. Not the first time that they've done that. They did that, I think, last year, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe the year before that. But violence at Al-Aqsa, the disputed Jerusalem holy site sacred to Jews as the Temple Mount, increasing attacks by settlers on Palestinians, and continued growth of settlements. So that's like the bullet point list. All right. So the blockade, raids, violence at Al-Aqsa, increasing attacks from settlers on Palestinians, and that's made news as well, like kind of like vigilante attacks from Israeli settlers, and then the continuing growth or more and more settlements on what disputed, I guess, Palestinian land. Okay. He said the morning attack was only the start of what he called Operation Al-Aqsa Storm. So I don't know if this is the exact same thing as Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. I don't know if like in Arabic flood and storm are like synonymous, or they're like used, like the same word is used to describe both things. I doubt that it would, because they're pretty different. If you speak Arabic, let me know if that's a possibility. But in this article from PBS, Operation Al-Aqsa Storm, which doesn't change the nature of that name, where it's kind of like a call out. Everybody, storm Al-Aqsa Mosque, conquer Jerusalem, rally to Al-Aqsa. Okay, quote, "Enough is enough." Deef, end quote. Deef, who does not appear in public, said in the recorded message, as he called on the Palestinians from East Jerusalem to northern Israel to join the fight. Continuing with the quote, "Today, the people are regaining their revolution," end quote. At a meeting of top security officials later on Sunday, Netanyahu said the first priority was to, quote unquote, cleanse the area of enemy infiltrators, then to, quote, exact a huge price from the enemy, end quote, and to fortify other areas so that no other militant groups join the war. So, I mean, we're just at the very beginning of this. We'll have to see if they're successful at that. We're going to have to see if the Taliban comes from Afghanistan. That would be pretty dramatic. We'll have to see, is Hezbollah going to start firing rockets? Is Palestinian Islamic Jihad? Is Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade? Who's going to, I don't know. We're just at the very beginning of this. The serious incursion on Simchat Torah, a normally joyous day when Jews complete the annual cycle of reading the Torah scroll, revived painful memories of the 1973 Mideast War, practically 50 years to the day, in which Israel's enemies launched a surprise attack on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. So going back to this, let's go back to hebcal.com. This year, Yom Kippur was on the 25th of September, and I did a video, I think on that day, talking about the fact that it was the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War on the Hebrew calendar. But on the Gregorian calendar, that was yesterday. Now, Simchat Torah in Shmini Atzoret, we've talked about this in previous videos. So you have the regular 7 days of Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles, which the last day was on Friday. And then today is the 8th day. And let's go to Chabad.org to learn a little bit more, just really quick, about Shmini Atzoret and Simchat Torah. Okay, so what? The holiday of Sukkot is followed by an independent holiday called Shemini Atzoret. In Israel, this is a 1-day holiday. In the diaspora, it is a 2-day holiday. So in Israel, they're doing both of them. It's both in the same day, Shemini Atzoret and Simchat Torah. This holiday is characterized by utterly unbridled joy, which reaches its climax on Simchat Torah when we celebrate the conclusion and restart of the annual Torah reading cycle. Again, that's essentially their come follow me. They have this, they read scriptures throughout the year. Every year it's the same on the same days. You can see people being really happy right here. Okay, so Shemini Atzoret literally means 8th day stop. It is from the verse which tells us that after the 7 days of Sukkot, on the 8th day, a stop, it shall be for you. The sages explain, during the course of the 7 days of Sukkot, a total of 70 bulls were offered on the temple altar. So this is already interesting. Let me just point this out. Even though it's on our calendar, today being 10/7, October 7th, if you times those together, it's 70. And the 7 days before this, you had 70 bulls that were offered on the altar. That's something interesting to think about. Why were they being offered on the altar? One for each of the 70 nations. That's how they referred to all the other nations outside of Israel. Just even though there's not 70, it's like it's a spiritual concept. In a sense, the Sukkot holiday included all of humanity. On this day, however, God asks us to, quote unquote, stop and celebrate one more day, just us and him, meaning just the Jews, the Jewish nation, and God. So we've talked about the implications of this day. Could it be that Adam Yom is held on this day where all you have is Israel and, God, meaning Christ, coming? That'd be interesting if it happened that way. I don't know. But anyway, that's it. The highlight of the second day, Simchat Torah, is the joy of the Torah. It is the Hakafot held on both. Well, I'm going to end here. I'm not going to get too much further into that, but I'll leave the link for this in the description below in case you want to read on. All right, back to this. So so today it happened on the 8th day stop, Shemini Atzoret. So this is a day that they were celebrating. It was supposed to be a joyous day. Maybe that's why they chose this day. It's like, oh, you're going to, be happy and celebrate. Well, we're going to bring misery to you. Later in the article, it says Israeli TV broadcast footage of explosions tearing through the Gaza-Israel border fence, followed by what appeared to be Palestinian gunmen riding into Israel on motorcycles. Okay, so they blew holes, I guess, into the border fence. And then people on motorcycles came riding through. That's like almost like something out of a movie. Gunmen also reportedly entered on pickup trucks. Videos released by Hamas appear to show at least 3 Israelis captured alive. The military declined to give details about casualties or kidnappings as it continued to battle the infiltrators. And sadly, it seems like there's videos of that on X that you can find that have been uploaded by the Palestinians of capturing these people. Let me refresh this. I can't remember if there is... Okay, there's nothing else from this article. Let's move on. Now, this is one thing that has me kind of concerned. You might remember that earlier this year, I went over this article. Gallant, who is the Minister of Defense, or the Defense Minister of Israel, Gallant warns multi-front war far more likely for Israel than limited conflicts. So we talked about the fact that earlier this year, they already had the sense that things are going to change going forward. It's not going to be going back to this where we have, South Lebanon conflict, First Intifada, Gaza war, like all these like mini wars. Everything since the Yom Kippur War has basically been like either mini wars or operations. And he's saying that that's not going to continue most likely in the future. And so that's my concern about this one, especially with Hamas calling out to all these different countries and military groups. Maybe the Israeli military kind of knew, okay, this is their master plan, and now we're actually seeing it take place starting today. Okay, he says, this is the end of the era of limited conflicts. We are facing a new security era in which there may be a real threat to all arenas at the same time. He said this back in April, and today it seems like that's exactly what Hamas is trying to do. Continuing with what he says, we operated for years under the assumption that limited conflicts could be managed, but that is a phenomenon that is disappearing. Today, there is a noticeable phenomenon of the convergence of the arenas. Iran is the driving force in the convergence of the arenas. It transfers resources, ideology, knowledge, and training to its proxies, Gallant said, referring to Palestinian terror groups in Gaza, Lebanon's Hezbollah, and other Iran-backed militias across the region. According to Gallant, Iran funds the Hezbollah terror group in Lebanon with $70 million a year, as well as, quote, knowledge and strategic weaponry, end quote, such as precise guided munitions. And this is Gallant right here, by the way. Now look at this. The Hamas, they're the ones that are doing this today and initiating all this. The Hamas terror group that rules Gaza Strip is funded by Iran with $100 million annually, with additional funding worth tens of millions of dollars going to the second largest terror group in the Palestinian enclave, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So number 1 is Hamas, and then number 2 is the PIJ, or Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They're the ones that did the rocket fire earlier this year. In Syria, hundreds of millions of dollars are sent to Iranian-backed militias each year, and the Syrian regime, led by dictator Bashar Assad, receives billions of dollars from Iran, he added. So you have to think about it this way. Based on everything that we know, everything that we've read, everything that we've studied, Iran is essentially the one that orchestrates everything. So with Hamas doing this and saying all this, I'm not so sure that they just decided to go rogue and they're like, okay, let's do it, guys. Follow us. Maybe, but this might be part of a much larger plan by Iran. I highly doubt that them being funded by Iran would just like, whenever they felt like it, decided to get this going. So there really might be something much, much bigger that's going on here. It may not be just like this spontaneous event. Now, there's another really interesting aspect to this before we get into more details of what's going on. I just recently did a video about this. This just recently happened where Netanyahu was at the UN and he was talking about this new peace plan. The centerpiece of it is peace in normalization of relations with Saudi Arabia. So he held up this visual aid that says the new Middle East. And you have Egypt, Sudan, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates all in green because the plan is to strengthen ties and friendships with these countries. Okay. So I did a video talking about this and comparing that to this scripture in 1 Thessalonians 5. And I'm not saying that this is fulfillment of that, but it could be. Either what he just did and what's happening today is fulfillment of this scripture, or it's like partially fulfilling it in some kind of way. Chapter heading: The saints will know the season of the second coming of Christ. Live the way saints should live. Rejoice evermore. Do not despise prophesyings. Verse 1. But of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety. Okay. Look at this right here. This is talking about peace and safety and military agreements. There is a military aspect to this, by the way, that Hamas actually addresses in one of these articles. So, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that the day should overtake you as a thief. Ye are all the children of light and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. And that's what we're doing today. We are watching what is happening right now, and it's happening very fast. Don't know how it's going to play out. Maybe it'll just like fizzle out. Maybe not. I kind of don't think so, because there's, like I said, there's a lot of unusual aspects to what's happening today. And we're going to go over some more of those right now. But it's interesting how, what if this just takes, like a week or 2 weeks? And what if everybody takes it seriously and they decide to descend on Israel, and more specifically Jerusalem? Then this might be the end. This really could. All right, let's continue on. All right, so Reuters. Hamas leader Haniya says Israel can't provide protection for Arab countries. This ties into what I was just talking about, this plan right here with Saudi Arabia. But I'll let him explain. In a televised speech, oops. I zoomed in and then I lost it. In a televised speech, Haniya addressed the Arab countries that have normalized ties with Israel in recent years. Quote, "We say to all countries, including our Arab brothers, that this entity," that's how they refer to Israel, an entity, "which cannot protect itself in face of resistors, cannot provide you with any protection. All the normalization agreements that you signed with that entity cannot resolve this," meaning the Palestinian conflict, end quote. In 2020, Israel reached normalization with the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and upgraded its ties with Morocco and Sudan, despite talks with the Palestinians being frozen for years. Regional powerhouse Saudi Arabia and Israel are also engaged in U.S. mediated talks to normalize relations, a prospect that drew condemnation from some Palestinian factions. Haniya also said armed Palestinian factions intend to expand the ongoing battle in Gaza to the West Bank and Jerusalem. Quote, "The battle moved into the heart of the Zionist entity," he said. So it's just like thing after thing after thing that they really it seems like they're really intending to do this, or they want to try and do this time. to take Jerusalem and to, in some kind of way, destroy Israel, which, I mean, I feel like that would take a lot, but maybe it wouldn't if everybody joins in. I don't know. Okay, that's it for this article. Let's move on to this one from The Guardian. Hamas and Israel at war, what we know so far. Now look at this picture. This is an Israeli Merkava tank. This is like their main battle tank. And I don't know. I'm not so sure I've ever seen that before. Like Palestinians capturing the Merkava. But this is kind of a stunning image, and this is not a good thing for others that would join in to see, because this would give you courage. It says Palestinians wave their national flag on top of an Israeli tank east of Khan Younis border crossing. I want to see where that is really quick. Khan Younis. Let's go to Google Earth. So it looks like it's on like the very, very, I don't know. It's like somewhere like right here, somewhere along here. So like more toward the south of the Gaza Strip. Okay. Hamas militants entered Israeli territory in the early hours of Saturday morning, appearing to take control of various communities in the south of the country. Fighting is still going on in some areas. So that's concerning, because I think the communities that they're talking about are like these little towns like this. Narim, Ein Hashlasha. These like little towns over here just right across the border. There's like all this like farm land that kind of separates the towns from the Gaza Strip. Except for this one right here. This is pretty close. Kerem Shalom. But you guys, if you go to my X, it has that video, and I'm assuming that it's one of these towns that's being referred to in this article that's being taken, where it shows people running in what looks like to me as like farm fields. Just like the one that I was in today when I looked at that rocket. Like running on foot for their lives. Oh my gosh. I wish I could show that video, but I'm not going to risk it. Okay, now let's go to Al Jazeera. Why the Palestinian group Hamas... Okay, why the Palestinian group Hamas launched an attack on Israel? All to know. Okay, Daniel Hagari, an Israeli army spokesman, said that the group attacked from land, sea, and air. That is kind of stunning. I mean, from air, okay, yeah, with rockets, I guess. Land, yes, okay. They crossed through that barrier. They punched a hole through it, and they came through on motorcycles and pickup trucks, and probably on foot too. But by sea, and when it comes to the air, I'm about to show you some. It wasn't just rockets that were coming from the air. Okay, the Israeli army also said it launched Operation Iron Swords against the Hamas group in the Gaza Strip. The early morning attacks occurred on Simchat Torah, a holiday which falls toward the conclusion of the week-long Jewish festival known as Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles. Where did the attacks take place? The rockets were fired as far north as Tel Aviv. Let's consult the map again. That is, relatively speaking, kind of far away from the Gaza Strip. Here's Tel Aviv up here. This is like Israel's main like city, like as far as like population goes and metro area. So rockets from all the way down here up to Tel Aviv. Okay. Hamas also sent fighters into southern Israel. Israeli media said that gunmen had opened fire on passersby in the town of Sderot. Now, this is a town that we were looking at earlier in the year when there was that rocket attack by Palestinian Islamic Jihad out of the Gaza Strip. So Sderot is right here, like to the northeast of the Gaza Strip. And just kind of looking at the satellite imagery, it looks like it's a more sizable town compared to some of these like smaller ones. You have a larger one here called Netivot, which looks like it might be bigger than Sderot. I'm not sure though. But anyway, okay, so we're talking about this. So what happened? Israeli media said that gunmen had opened fire on passersby in the town of Sderot. And footage circulating on social media appeared to show clashes in city streets, as well as gunmen in jeeps roaming the countryside. One report claims Hamas fighters had taken control of multiple Israeli civilian population centers, where residents were begging for help from their government. That would be a very scary situation if you're in one of these small areas here, and now it's overrun by Palestinian, Hamas militants. That would suck. The Israeli army says dozens of fighter jets were carrying out attacks on Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip. Currently, the gun battles are taking place in and around the towns of Kfar Aza, Sderot, Sufa, Nahal Oz, Magin, Be'eri, and the Re'im military base. Oh, I didn't see that before. So there's a military base that's under attack right now. Where's that? Sorry, I gotta see. Where is it? Okay, that didn't help. Let's just do Re'im Israel. Maybe that'll pinpoint it. Okay, so there's Re'im. I don't know. Somewhere around here, there's a military base. Okay, fine. All right, moving on. Why did Hamas attack Israel? Hamas spokesman Khalid Kadomi has told Al Jazeera that the group's military operation is in response to all the atrocities the Palestinians have faced over the decades. Quote, "We want the international community to stop atrocities in Gaza against Palestinian people, our holy sites like Al-Aqsa. All these things are the reason behind starting this battle," he said. And then continuing, well, who's he? Oh, that was from Kadomi. And then this next one is from Mohammed Daif, the Hamas military commander. Quote, this is the day of the greatest battle to end the last occupation on earth. Well, those are some pretty big words. And are they hollow, or do they actually intend to do that? Holy cow, I don't know. This is the day of the greatest battle. This may be like prophetic, not like he's prophesying, but he may actually be talking about the greatest battle. He may be talking about Armageddon. I did a video where we've looked at, let me just pull it up. I think sometimes people think that prophecies are just going to be so obvious. And so, for example, the final war on Israel. Let me see if I can find this. Maybe it's under... Sorry, give me just 1 second. Tribes in a timeline. Israel, final war. Okay, so I did a video one time where I took all these different conflicts, wars, conflicts, rebellions, and I put it all down on here. And in my view, when it comes to the final war, I would not be surprised if it's been going on since 1947 with the War of Independence. Here I have all the numbers that I could find of those that have died in these conflicts. In column C, these are all the people that have died in terrorist attacks. And it adds up to a lot. And this entire thing is referred to under one name called the Arab-Israeli conflict. And then a subsection of that is the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. So I took the low estimate and the high estimate because sometimes they're like, well, the low estimate is this, but it could have been as high as this. So I took both sides. So the low estimate is that so far 64,000 people have died, not including whatever terror incidents there have been this year, including this war that's now taking place. And then on the high side, 118,000. But that doesn't include all these different countries that I haven't been able to get numbers for, because these other countries have also been involved in conflicts, but it's like they don't put out their numbers as far as losses go. So this is like even on the high end, I think this is a very, very conservative estimate of how many have lost their lives, let alone people that have been injured and other things that come out of conflicts since Israel has been founded as a nation. So if this entire thing, the entire history of the state of Israel has been one big war, and it has been one big conflict at the very least, then we might be at the very end with the final battle of that war. Okay, so let's go. Where were we? So this is the day of the greatest battle to end the last occupation on earth. Then he also says, everyone who has a gun should take it out. The time has come. These are, man. Okay, Hamas called on, quote, the resistance fighters in the West Bank. Remember, the Gaza Strip is over here. This is where Hamas is. They're calling on anyone over here in the West Bank to join in. So both Palestinian territories. Everyone who has a gun should take it out. The resistance fighters in the West Bank, as well as our Arab and Islamic nations, to join the battle, in a statement posted on Telegram. What is the Israeli government saying? The Israeli government warned Israelis who live near Gaza to stay in their homes or head to shelters. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country is in a war it will win, quote unquote. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said Israel, quote, will win this war, end quote. Hamas, he said, had made a, quote, grave mistake this morning and launched a war against the state of Israel, end quote. Okay, nothing else for this one. Associated Press. Hamas surprise attack out of Gaza stuns Israel and leaves hundreds dead in fighting retaliation. Okay. The strength, sophistication, and timing of the attack shocked Israelis. Yeah, me too. Like I said, I didn't think that it was possible to have anything like the Yom Kippur War again. If you're going to do something on a large scale, even like this, where it's not like all these different nations coming together, but even this, I felt like surveillance technology and techniques would be sophisticated enough to detect something like this. Okay, but look, Hamas fighters used explosives to break through the border fence enclosing the long blockaded Mediterranean territory, then crossed with motorcycles, pickup trucks, paragliders, and there's footage of that, by the way, on X. So earlier when I was talking about by air, land, and sea, yeah, not just rockets, paragliders and speedboats on the coast. Bodies of dead Israeli civilians and Hamas militants were seen on the streets of Israeli towns. Associated Press photos showed an abducted elderly Israeli woman surrounded by gunmen being brought back into Gaza on a golf cart, and another woman squeezed between two fighters on a motorcycle. Images on social media appeared to show fighters parading what seemed to be captured Israeli military vehicles through Gaza streets in a... Okay, I'm going to skip some parts here. The conflict threatened to spiral dramatically further. Previous conflicts between Israel and Gaza's Hamas ruler brought widespread death and destruction in Gaza and days of rocket fire on Israeli towns. The mix is potentially more volatile now, with Israel's far-right government stung by the security breach and with Palestinians in despair over a never-ending occupation. So, yeah, if you didn't know, when Netanyahu was reelected this last time, everyone's saying that this government is much more to the right, more hawkish, There's one guy in particular, Ben Gvir, who a lot of people do not like because he is like the most hockeyist person. Hockeyist? Yeah, the most hockeyist person you'll ever come across. And so I guess the fear here in this article is that, that it's going to be really intense. It's not going to be like maybe it's not going to be so much a moderated response. It's probably going to be pretty severe. And that's what Netanyahu said. It's going to be unprecedented, the likes of which they've never seen. Only time's going to tell what that's going to look like. The Hamas incursion on Simchat Torah, a normally joyous day when Jews complete the annual cycle of reading the Torah scroll, revived painful memories of the 1973 Mideast War, or the Yom Kippur War, practically 50 years to the day, in which Egyptian and Syria launched a surprise attack on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, aiming to take back Israeli-occupied territories. Asked by reporters how Hamas had managed to catch the army off guard, Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht, an Israeli army spokesman, replied, quote unquote, "That's a good question." That is not what you want to hear your military leadership saying of your country. They don't know. Somehow they don't know, or at least officially they're saying that they don't know. The Israeli military confirmed that a number of Israelis had been taken captive. A spokesman for Hamas military wing, Abu Abeida, said the group was holding dozens of Israeli soldiers captive in quote-unquote safe places and tunnels in the Gaza Strip. If true, the claim could set the stage for complicated negotiations on a swap with Israel, which is holding thousands of Palestinians in its prisons. The assault brought scenes of bloodshed into towns of southern Israel, with a trail of civilian bodies where they had encountered the advancing gunmen. And then it has more descriptions. I'm not going to read it here, but this is crazy. Okay, quote, "With rockets, we somehow feel safer knowing that we have the Iron Dome missile defense system in our safe rooms. But knowing that terrorists are walking around communities is a different kind of fear," said Meir Tamari, a 42-year-old volunteer firefighter and mother of three in Nahal Oz. Hamas said it had planned for a potentially long fight. Quote, "We are prepared for all options, including all-out war," the deputy head of the Hamas political bureau, Saleh al-Arori, told Al Jazeera TV. Quote, "We are ready to do whatever is necessary for the dignity and freedom of our people." Lebanon's, okay, now look, this is really what I'm curious to see. Lebanon's Hezbollah, so let's go back to the map. So you have the Gaza Strip, Hamas is there, so is Palestinian Islamic Jihad. I haven't seen any reports saying that they're involved in this yet, just Hamas. But again, Hamas called on all Palestinians in Israel, including the West Bank, to join in, as well as all Arab and Islamic nations. And up here in the north, in Lebanon, this is where Hezbollah operates from. And so that's another potential participant in this war that just broke out today. Lebanon's Hezbollah militant group congratulated Hamas, praising the attack as a response to, quote-unquote, Israeli crimes. The group said its command in Lebanon was in contact with Hamas about the operation. The attack comes at a time of historic division within Israel over Netanyahu's proposal to overhaul the judiciary. Mass protests over the plan have sent hundreds of thousands of Israeli demonstrators into the streets and prompted hundreds of military reservists to avoid volunteer duty. Turmoil that has raised fears over the military's battlefield readiness and raised concerns about its deterrence over its enemies. So, if you've been watching my channel this year, you know that Israel is having the largest protest that it's ever had in its history, and it's over this how they want to basically overhaul the judicial branch of of the government. I'm not going to go into all the details, but a lot of Israel's enemies had been making comments that, look, they're destroying themselves, the military is getting weaker, and there was a lot of concern about how these protests are being perceived by Israel's enemies. And I myself have wondered, why are they not attacking now? Especially when the Israelis, when the protesters marched from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in very large numbers, and it was very dramatic looking. This was just before the vote on the first bill that has to do with this judicial overhaul package. And, the time came and went, but there's still been protests ever since that time. They haven't stopped. But I was just thinking, gosh, what are they doing? Like Iran and all these hostile groups, because this must be a very like prime opportunity for them to attack. I thought it would never come, but it looks like maybe today is that time that they've chosen to take advantage. Later in the article, it says Israel has maintained a blockade over Gaza since Hamas seized control of the territory in 2007. The bitter enemies have fought 4 wars since then. Okay, CNN. Hamas has launched an unprecedented attack against Israel. Here's what to know. And I think this one, maybe I had something just at the very end. Yeah. Israel's adversaries welcomed the attack. Major General Rahim Safavi, an advisor to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said, quote, okay, so this is from a major general, that's a rank, major general, in Iran. Quote, we congratulate the Palestinian fighters and will stand by their side until the liberation of Palestine and Holy Jerusalem. State-run ISNA said. I'd be very interested to see if Iran itself would get involved. I don't know. It's too soon to say. Hezbollah, the Iran-backed Lebanese militant group, so they're the ones that are in the north, praised the assaults and said it is in contact with Palestinian militant groups at home and abroad, quote unquote. Its Al-Manar channel said. So at the very least, these different groups are lending words of support, and they're in communication with Hamas. And I guess we'll have to see if that turns into something bigger. Associated Press, 5 things to know about the Hamas militant group's unprecedented attack on Israel. Okay, what do we got here? Okay, then as now... I didn't already read this. Okay. Then as now, Israelis had assumed that their intelligence services would be able to alert the army to any major attack or invasion well in advance. The colossal failure still haunts the legacy of then Prime Minister Golda Meir and helped bring down the lengthy rule of the once dominant Labour Party. That's referring to the Yom Kippur War, how they didn't detect that invasion in advance. Well, today, it's happened again. This is now the second time in Israeli history that they've been blindsided on this scale. Now the question of how the militants were able to stage such a huge and coordinated attack, which has already killed more Israelis than any single assault since the Second Palestinian Uprising 2 decades ago, without triggering Israeli intelligence concerns, has already presented a major challenge to Netanyahu's ultra-nationalist government. So, look, they're saying that since the Second Intifada, which was in 2000, right here. So since the turn of the millennium, this has killed already more Israelis than all these other like smaller ones right here. So we're going back essentially 23 years, because that's when it started, the Second Intifada, from the year 2000 to 2005. Since that time, there hasn't been a conflict that's killed more Israelis than this one, and we're only on day 1. At the very least, I don't know if this is going to be short, but at the very least, it's probably going to go more than just a day. Let me read this again. Now, the question of how the militants were able to stage such a huge and coordinated attack, which has already killed more Israelis than any single assault since the Second Palestinian Uprising 2 decades ago, without triggering Israeli intelligence concerns, has already presented a major challenge to Netanyahu's ultranationalist government. Okay. In a dramatic escalation unseen in decades, Hamas also sent paragliders flying into Israel, the Israeli military said. The brazen attack recalled a famous assault in the late 1980s when Palestinian militants crossed from Lebanon into northern Israel on hang gliders and killed 6 Israeli soldiers. In recent years, the Israeli religious nationalists, such as National Security Minister Ben-Gvir, that's the guy I was talking about earlier, have increased their visits to the compound, meaning the Temple Mount. He has been incredibly provocative. He like, if you read about all the things that he's done, he is itching for a fight, including he knew that it would cause a big stir by him going to the Temple Mount. I'm not saying that he doesn't have a right to go there, but there's also I think things you have to consider, and it really made a lot of people upset. Last week, during the Jewish Harvest Festival of Sukkot, hundreds of ultra-Orthodox Jews and Israeli activists visited the site, meaning the Temple Mount, prompting condemnation from Hamas and accusations that Jews were praying there in violation of the status quo agreement, because Jews are not supposed to pray on the Temple Mount. Okay, that's it for that article, and now we're on the last one. Hamas' most serious attack in a generation blindsided Israel. Jeremy Bowen. And I just have something at the very end of this article. At the heart of the trouble is the intractable and unresolved century-long conflict between Arabs and Jews for control of the land between the Mediterranean Sea and the River Jordan. These rapidly escalating events prove once again that the conflict cannot simply be managed. When it is left to fester, violence and bloodshed are guaranteed. So, I don't know. Maybe things really are coming to a head. Maybe after this whole history of all these different conflicts, large-scale wars, rebellions, smaller conflicts, terrorist attacks, for 75 years, maybe their words aren't hollow when they're saying, this is it. Let's conquer Jerusalem. Let's complete this revolution. Let's, all the different things that we just read. So given this, along with everything else that we've seen around the world, natural disasters, other wars, social conflicts, and the social war and strife and stuff like that. And then things that we've seen inside the church that we've never seen, things that we've heard that have never been said. Things are getting really, really hot and heavy and really fast. And it really may all be coming to a head. I would not treat this lightly if I were you. I'm not saying that this is the end, but I think that we should watch it very closely. I'll do my best to try and keep on top of events and keep you apprised. But yikes. This does seem to stand out. And of course, there's always the Gadiat and robber secret combination factor, because we don't, with a lot of historical events, we sometimes can't be sure what is actually going on and what's going on behind the scenes. This may be part of a bigger thing. But whatever the case, whether we know exactly what's behind it and what's not, we do know the effects of it. That's not secret, or at least for the most part, it's not secret. So there you go. All right, well, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.